is engineering materials and health, and that's what I do for my day job. So I'm a postdoc at MIT in Robert Langer's lab, and there I'm actually engineering models of the brain. And so we're coming up with a model that really is going to recapitulate what happens in the brain in a way that we can do what is the equivalent of a clinical trial in the lab. So whereas when we normally want to try to develop a drug, it has this really long process. It starts in the lab and then runs into animal models. And then if things work out well in both of those places, then it goes into humans. But often when it goes into humans, it doesn't do what they want it to do, right? And this process normally takes 10 years and about $2 billion. And we don't really know why things are failing when they get to humans, but we've cured cancer many times in mice. We've cured many problems in mice that we can't cure in humans. And so we're really trying to solve this problem, especially I'm really interested in the brain because there's so many different neurological diseases that are really interesting and really hard to get at, because you're not just gonna open up someone's skull and look inside, see what's going on. And even if you could, it doesn't necessarily give you any more information. So we really need good models where we can mimic what's happening in the brain. We can perturb it, see what happens in different conditions, try to mimic that disease to be able to better study it and understand it, and in a way where we can apply treatments. This is the kind of clinical trial part, and see if we can fix that then. Okay, so this is part of what I'm doing now. We have mini brain on a chip technology that we're developing. And then on the other side, I think you guys are also interested in is advancing women in STEM. And this is something, I've been passionate about and working on for a long time in various ways. And, like we were casually talking about in the beginning, am working on in a more intense way right now with the launch of what will be a nonprofit soon. So those are two main areas. And what I thought we could potentially do is use this for first a little bit of an exercise for you guys, and then I'll give an example with both of those areas. But I do want to leave plenty of time for Q&A. I could talk a lot about my current research. I could talk a lot about my path and how I got here. I'm from a small town, and really, my parents are artists, and my exposure to science came largely through classes. I always had this interest in science, in nature maybe especially, but then a lot of my interest in biology happened through my classwork. And then I did my undergrad at Princeton. I really got hooked on research there. Really encourage, if you're thinking about research, to kind of get that hands-on experience. I'm a very hands-on person, so that really brought everything to life for me. And then afterwards, I was thinking about going to grad school, but I wasn't positive if that was the route that I wanted to take. So I worked in New York City afterwards, getting more business experience and managerial experience, and then ended up deciding to go back into science and worked in a lab while applying to grad school, and then got my PhD at Stanford. Was on the West Coast there for 4 years, and I'm now back on the East and doing my postdoc at MIT before I apply for faculty positions. So I'd be happy to talk about anything within that as well. And then happy to talk about leadership in STEM, or just do open Q&A, whatever you guys would like to ask. So, but maybe to kick it off, you can think about any questions, any things you wanted to guide this conversation with. But one thing I was thinking we could do is if you guys can, take out a piece of paper, or maybe just, think to yourself there, or, take notes on your phone or something. But I have 3 questions. So the first is to think about, what is something that you are really passionate about that is a real need you would like to solve? right? What needs in the world do you see that you would really like to solve? So you can take a second to think about that, jot down some answers. Could be one thing, could be more than one thing, could seem out of reach, could seem very doable. But what's something that you're really passionate about? All right, and then the second thing, and you can continue to work on these later as well. The second thing is, what are things that you're good at that you're really, well, that you're working at, or you are currently good at, right? Like you will be good one day, or you're already good at. What are those kind of skill sets you're developing? Do you say like really are your strong skill sets? Maybe it's like what your mom always says you're good at, what people praise you for, or like, you know, what comes easy to you, what comes naturally to you, different characteristics. And these things are good things to write down too, because they do play a big role in kind of like what fits us best, what kind of future job you'll have or path you can take. Okay, and then the third question is, how can you use number 2 to help with number 1? Right, so how can you use your skill sets to help with a need that you see? And it's good to generate multiple answers for this, and you know, try to connect those dots. Okay, so maybe I don't know if anybody has one they want to share. Maybe we can do it later as well. Can you use passion to possibly help build communities on Mars? If you can dream it, you can do it. Yeah, there's multiple steps involved in that, right? Yeah, but so I think we're generating some good ideas. We need humanities people. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, yeah, so I wanted to go through that because I think, for multiple reasons, but I think, you know, number one, when we think about what we want to do in the future, it's good to think about what am I passionate about? Like, what needs do I see in the world, right? This is like a good approach to getting there. The second good approach is to think about what you're good at, like what comes naturally to you, or what do you really want to do, you'll be driven to do, you'll develop those skill sets. Okay, I think those are two really good paths to arriving at something that'll be meaningful for you to do. And I think what can happen is that there can be a disconnect. Often, like number 3 is the hardest, because you know, you see things you want to help with, but maybe that's, you know, not your main job. Maybe, you know, you don't have the skill sets to get to Mars tomorrow, right? There can be this disconnect. And I think really the magic is finding ways that you can connect the dots, at least in small ways. Okay, so you know, if you're really passionate about building communities on Mars, then you know, looking into aerospace stuff, looking into helping, like doing research at NASA, getting an internship at NASA, right? Having little baby steps along that process is really valuable. And I think when these two are matched, then that's really, really like gold, you know, like you're happy and fulfilled because you're doing what your skill sets are enabling you to do, and you're really meeting that need. So I would say, you know, you guys that are young, I mean, in college, right, there's so many possibilities. You're trying to figure out like what are you going to do with what you're learning. You know, is it all going to be useful? Are you going to get to a stage where like you're finding meaning in what you're doing? Right, so that kind of that connecting part, right, is tough. And I would like encourage you to be patient with that. I think it evolves over time, and your approach to getting jobs, your approach to finding your way should just to be getting a little bit warmer, right? Getting a little bit closer. So for example, on my research end, I'm really passionate about eliminating poverty. I really want to eliminate hunger. I want to reduce poverty. I want to alleviate disease. Okay, so those are like some needs that I think are really important to me. When I look at my skills, I have always been drawn to cells. Like I think cellular biology is like the coolest thing in the world. I love making models of things. I love these micro scale models. I love tissue engineering, which is kind of this like mimicking tissue, right? Engineering tissue replacements. I think is like a really exciting field, and I've kind of built up a toolbox in this. And so now I'm actually combining those worlds in what I'm doing in the lab, right? I'm like using my biology and my biomaterials background in order to develop something that could in the future alleviate disease, right? So we're like really building a model that I can use and that many other people will be able to use to try to understand what's happening in diseases like Alzheimer's. Another example on the advancing STEM end, you know, one thing that outside of disease that I'm really passionate about is just like peace and joy. Like I want people just to be happy, and like for there to be peace in the world. And there's a great quote by one of my role models who says there'll be no peace in the world until there's peace in men's hearts. And over time, I've like really thought about this, and I've really thought like, you know, how are we gonna like create peace in the world? And this quote, like I've always come back to because I think that it's really the source of it, right? So, you know, when everyone is like accepting of who each of us is and who are the people around us are, you know, as they are, accepting of them and loving them for who they are, you know, then we can't have any problems, you know, then there will be peace. So this is something that I've thought a lot about. And when I think about what can I do on that end, you know, as a scientist and a woman in STEM, I think about, you know, how we can help other people be happy with who they are and develop their skill sets to find a good career path for them, to be able to get to these positions in STEM, to be able to use the skills in the way that fits them best. And so Stemex Chats is something that has kind of arisen from this. And, you know, I'm focused on Stemex, but in the meantime, I've kind of created this model that I hope many other people will use to fit other professions, right? And so we're actually incorporating it as XX Chats, and soon there'll be business X Chats, there'll be humanities X Chats, to try to help girls find like what they're excited about professionally, to get more exposure, to get more help, right? And so, you know, both of these examples that I just gave you are things that that like have been recent developments for me, right? The number one, like the interest and the passions have been the same for maybe like over a decade. The skill sets have built up over time, but the connector didn't arrive until this year. Right? And this is not to say that like, oh yeah, now everything's fine. I mean, obviously there's still like tons of work to do, right? And I'm going to go through the same process that we went through in the beginning. I'm going to do this many more times in my life, God willing, right? If as long as I'm alive, I'm going to keep going through this process and thinking about what need do I want to solve? What can I do to solve it? And then really making it happen, right? And so I think this is a process that's good to think about. And each one of us is unique, and so each of you will bring something different to this, right? All of our solutions can be different, and we need so many different skills, right? I think, Sarah, you said you need humanities people. we really need different people, different backgrounds in order to contribute to things and really make for the best solutions. So I think like that's really valuable. And I think, yeah, maybe my main message here is like, to be daring, right? To be excited about contributing to the world because you can, right? And everybody can contribute, and you will contribute in your own way. What we want to think about, and I would like push you a little bit to reflect on, is how you can contribute in the best way, right? And the best way is not just like, I don't know, optimizing some equation or something. I mean, if we're STEM people here, I don't know, maybe that has different meanings. But the best way is really like the best way that you can, like optimizing what you can provide to, right? So, it is harnessing you, like your approach to things, your skills, but stretching yourself, right? Being not held back by barriers that you may confront right out of the gate, right? So pushing through. And I think there can be this temptation, and maybe, STEM people run into it a lot, that, if it's hard, then it's not for me, right? And this is a total misconception. And STEM is hard. It doesn't matter who you are, right? STEM is hard. And so sometimes it's going to take efforts, and it does not mean that it's not for you. It's good to push through. Okay, so yeah, so be daring. Think about how you can contribute, but I think it is good to think about it, and it's good to think about what can I do concretely? Because sometimes we get these like big grand plans, or we have these ideas that don't really seem to come to fruition, or what you would like to do seems to clash with what you have to do, right? And that's a problem. I think that can create a lot of unhappiness, right? So it's really seeing like, okay, where am I now? Like what is my job? How can I address a need there, right? How through what I'm doing can I really make this contribution? Can I really make the world better through that, right? Address these needs. So I think that would be that in a nutshell would be my message. And I don't know, maybe this process is something you can reflect on from time to time. It's definitely something that is updated every stage of your career. And so many things can change our thinking and can change our approach. So I think it's good to consider often. There's some statistic about like the number of, I think it's like less than 10% of people that know where they want to be in 10 years, right? I think it's hard to know, right? And this is not even just young people. This is like the data is from a general population of people, right? So often like the future can seem uncertain, but when you go at it with this approach of just, okay, how can I contribute here? How can I contribute here? You know that you'll always like you'll be somewhere worthwhile. And from every experience you have, you'll be learning worthwhile things. So I don't know, I feel like I'm trying to read the chat here simultaneously, but maybe we should open it up a little bit to have like a little bit of conversation, or if somebody wants to ask a question, maybe you can just unmute yourself and then take the floor.
Alice, I see that Susie has a question here.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, she's saying that, and I think she's talking about you coming from a small town, and given that you've attended big universities such as Princeton and MIT and Stanford, how did you remain persistent in your education? And then she's got a few other questions. So
yeah. So I think one thing that really got me through a lot of things was my parents. So I think I definitely grew up with the sense that I could do whatever I set my mind to. And I think my parents said this to me like probably a million times. And it really penetrated. And, you know, take home message, tell your kids that. But I think, you know, no matter if they did or not, you need to believe that, you know. And I think it's a good mentality that, you know, you can do whatever you set your mind to. You can succeed, you can make it through. So I think like for me, going to Princeton was a bit of a shock. It was all of a sudden, you know, I was the valedictorian in my high school, but like I get to Princeton, it's just like, wow, everything is hard all of a sudden. All of these classes is, you know, it was a lot to manage. For me, that was quite the change. And I actually called my mom crying one day when I did poorly on an exam, and she just laughed. It was like, Mom. She's like, well, what did you get? Like a Q or something? And that was like one of those like melting moments for me, you know, like all of your like your fears and your concerns just kind of like melt away, because no, I didn't get a Q. And like, of course, what she meant by that is, you know, it's not so bad, you know, it really, it doesn't matter. She wasn't like, oh, was it a C or was it a D or was it a B minus? You know, she didn't even ask, you know, was it a Q? And so I think that really helped me. And then when I went back for fall break, I think I could then like kind of reconnect with my roots there. And that was really helpful because, you know, when you go off to college, you're thrown into this whole different environment. And I think it can happen for people at different stages that it kind of strikes them more. But for me, it was definitely the first experience of college. But when I went home, then, you know, I realized like, yeah, I'm still who I am. My parents still love me, you know, everything's still good. And then I can go out and I can try, but my identity, you know, the core of who I am is not dependent on, you know, whether I ace this exam or not. So I think that was really helpful. But yeah, I mean, I think remaining persistent in your education, just, you know, being connected to what you want to accomplish, having those high ideals and ambitions, right? Having big goals for yourself, and then just being tenacious and going at them. I think it helps to surround yourself by good people, you know. It's always good to seek out people that make you better, right? That'll help push you outside of your comfort zone, or people that you really admire and you want them to rub off on you a little bit, right? I think that's really healthy, and that can help a lot too. What was my biggest motivator? Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think, you know, I kind of had a lot of goals, you know, from the beginning. I mean, when I was little, I think I would say I wanted to be an artist. Every step of the way, you know, I got interested in different things, and then I saw the possibilities. Some of these big needs that I highlighted, you know, both on kind of like the research end and then the big picture end, I think those are motivating factors for me for sure. I also was really, I think, marked a lot by the experience of my grandparents. So I grew up kind of spending a lot of time with my grandparents. They were the babysitters and I was with them a lot. And my grandparents were people that didn't really have much education. Their parents immigrated, and you know, my grandpa was tasked with like helping out on the family farm from a young age. And so neither of them had even attended high school. And my grandpa would always say, you know, stay in school. He would tell me, just stay in school. That was one thing he always said. And then the second thing he said on repeat was, whatever you do, don't give up. That was like his battle cry. Whatever you do, don't give up. And I think that really stuck with me as well. And I think it's an important lesson, you know. I think he saw what you can do with education and how much of a game changer that can be. And so, yeah, maybe that's why my brother and I are both PhDs. But yeah, I think it's good to think about what you want to accomplish in your life, and yeah, all the needs that you can contribute to. What types of barriers did I confront? Yeah, so I think the main thing were like, was classwork getting harder. I mean, science is not easy, right? Research, like, especially biology, it never works the way you want it to. It has its own rules that are not my rules. My cells die, they can get infected, they can get sick, they can, all kinds of things. And my first day of grad school, actually, the professor came out and he said, you're all here because you're good at taking tests, but now we're going to see how you can think. And that was another pivotal moment for me, because I realized that, yeah, from now on, it's not about like knowing the textbook answers, right? From now on, it's really being able to navigate uncertainty. It's being able to take in whatever comes and being able to respond to it, being able to process it, being able to make a plan, to not get stuck, to not get, overwhelmed by the failures, but to make something from that. So I think there's many barriers like innately in STEM, because we're dealing with things that have a whole nother program going on, and we don't understand it yet. We're trying to, but I think you learn a lot in that process, and I think it's great. But I'd say those are the main things.
Well, thanks for sharing those, good pieces of, all of those things that have motivated you and brought you to where you are now, Alice. And also all that, the good advice that you've shared with us too. I can say that, I feel like your message is so important for young women today. It's different, and we want to encourage you to take the risks and go on and into new territories. Or what was it like Star Trek? You're probably too young for that, but discovering new frontiers. So
that's right. That's right.
But
yeah, my dad loves that show.
Oh.
So yeah. I'm with you. I'm with you.
Okay. Oh, that's awesome. Okay. Does anybody else have questions for Alice? Oh wait, let's see. There's something else here. Right, that's very true. A standardized test score doesn't really identify intelligence. Yes, so Susie's agreeing with you. I feel like in a lot of ways, STEM can be very artistic. Definitely. Oh.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you are an artist in STEM. So you say you wanted to be an artist when you were growing up, and you really still are an artist, right? In a sense.
Yeah, it's funny. I joke with my colleagues. We talk about, often people ask me for like course recommendations, or like, what are the things that I have to take in college or that would like serve me best later. I think the class that I got the most use out of was actually graphic design. I think I used that more than almost any one singular class. Now for me, it's like a lot of paper writing. Anytime you read an academic journal article, like the data is in these figures that take so much layout and formatting and thinking through, right? And it's really meant to tell a story. But in order to convey that story in a visual way, you need to be good at the visuals. And so doing that well, I think really helps, convey your message, make the points clear, so that you're better able to convey what happened in your study. So I use graphic design principles a whole lot, and am always, making presentations, making slide decks, making, things for work. I'm always giving presentations at work, and so I think that was a good skill set. And I think writing is another one. And I think that's, graphic design, writing, I think those are pretty general things because they have to do with communicating. Whatever job you have, you'll need to communicate information in some way. Right? You'll need to receive information, give information, work together to understand it. Yeah, so those are course things, but yes, art, there's a lot of art in STEM. There's a whole lot of art in STEM. And I think that was one thing that drew me to engineering was that, there's a lot of design, right? It's not just, the plain study of something which is like really cool in itself, but it's often like, how do I design a system to be able to do something, right? To be able to understand it better or to be able to improve on it or, harness it to do something different. So yeah, I think from the beginning, that was why. And it's really funny because I changed my mind like 1,000,001 times in college. Like I had a really hard time picking a major. But what I graduated in was actually the same thing that I applied to college for. I applied as chemical engineering and I did graduate in chemical engineering. But in the process, I was visual art. Should I be art history? Should I be mechanical engineering? So anyway, I went through a lot of thought processes about that. But yeah, but I think it's good to have different skill sets. And I think you'll see as you get older that often, the people that are really good on the technical end kind of take certain career paths, and having more broader skill sets are really advantageous for other career paths. And as you work your way up in a company, for example, you need more managerial expertise, right? You need more skills for how to deal with people, how to talk to people. And those are things you don't learn in a textbook. Now they're coming up with ways to explain them in a textbook, but you really practice them in real life. So I think building other skills is great. And often women have a lot of those other skills. And that's why now we're being, recognized as being needed in the workplace for different reasons. And I think that's a great thing. So we can keep using that to our advantage and try to, use it well to really, make workplaces more human and more caring and better places to be.
Everything you're saying is just, I'm smiling from ear to ear and I'm getting so excited by everything you're saying. Alice, I do have a question. I'm wondering, what was the most challenging class for you?
The most challenging class. I had a really tough class when I was at Princeton. I took this class that it was kind of a bit of a adventure. Because I don't know where it stands now, but they're trying to come up with a new approach to teaching introductory science. So instead of having chemistry class and then math class and then physics class, we had what's called integrated science. And so the course is organized based on mathematical models. And you study physics and calculus, computer science, all of this all in one, chemistry, physics, biology, all of those subjects, all in a single course that's worth a lot more credits, but it's all combined. And I took that my freshman year at Princeton, and it was really a steep learning curve. That was definitely a hard course for me. And I'm definitely found my path more in an applied way, and that course was like very more on the kind of theoretical track. But I learned a lot from it, and the way that they organized it was really innovative. And as it's honed, maybe that will be the future. I think it helps you to draw connections between different disciplines that otherwise you may not. And I think there are real advantages to that. But at the time, it was definitely difficult for me. but there are valuable takeaways even from that. So I think nothing is ever wasted, you know. Experience is always valuable. So I learned a lot. I learned how to study because of that course. I learned how to push through when I just felt like taking a nap, and because I had to, you know. So I think all of that was really helpful and helped me to kind of like kick into gear and learn some of those study skills, those preparation, like being able to do practice problems, and be aggressive about, like, you know, actually looking at the solutions. You know, people will like correct, you know, you'll like do the practice problems and you'll grade it, and then you'll like not want to think about what you got wrong. And you just have to get over that, right? Because you don't learn unless you see where you made mistakes. It takes a little bit of humility to do that, but you realize, like, the quicker you embrace that, the better off you'll be, right? And so this is another thing I think I learned a lot through that class. So yeah.
Thank you so much for answering that.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for the question. All right, I see another question. I can read it out, or Nora, do you want to ask it?
Well, my question is that if you think you can inspire young girls to get into STEM, or is it something innate, something that you know you're going into STEM since you're a young girl, or is it something that you can influence on, like being a teacher on your students, or being a mom on your kids, or being, I don't know, an aunt on your nieces and nephews? Is it something that you can modify, or you're just good at science since you're young?
Yeah, nature versus nurture, right? This seems to be, a question for so many different things. Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's an important question, and I think there's been a lot of efforts to be able to expose young girls to the possibilities of STEM for this reason, right? For that whole like nurture argument, that it's not just nature, it's not just what is innate to you, as you say, but you can, when you see it, when you see the example, when you're kind of exposed to that can awaken something in you and help you grow into it. Yeah, I mean, I definitely see that, and I've seen it in so many people that, you know, they've had someone in their life that was in STEM, or that showed them something about STEM that was exciting, right? So many people have had that early on, or they discover it through school, through a teacher, they discover it in college. So I think, you know, there's different things that can spark it. I think it's interesting to think, you know, I mean, for me, like, now that I look back, you know, there was so much science in like what I was doing in the garden with my grandparents, and, you know, it was like really like botany going on with the hybrid plants my grandma was making, and right, I mean, and they weren't science per se, but, you know, there's a lot of science in there. And so I think that kind of, that wonder, that inquisitiveness, you know, that interest in like understanding the world around you, I think those are things that like you really, that do lead to science. They can lead to other disciplines as well, right? I have a lot of friends that are also very like reflective, that ended up in philosophy or in literature. But yeah, I think that those are good things early on. I think people have different skill sets as well. You know, we kind of talked about this at the beginning, that, you know, there's certain needs or, you know, causes that you want to contribute to, and then there's certain skill sets that you have. I think many people like the possibilities of STEM, but maybe don't enjoy so much of the technical aspects, and they are great at helping advance these causes in other ways. You know, every company needs HR, every company needs the marketing team and the sales, and right, the business aspects help our organizations actually make things become a reality, right? So there's many different angles to things. I think that's something that's like hard to appreciate, you know, when you're younger, and like, but as time goes on, you know, I've seen so many of my classmates take such different routes. You know, many of them are doing something for a company related to science, but, you know, they're not really doing any kind of, they're not using their technical background per se. But what you learn through STEM education is not just, okay, these equations that you can apply, but it's a whole approach. You know, it's this problem solving method. It's this way of like gathering data, of thinking about the data, of like thinking about how to analyze it, how to interpret it, right? It's this whole toolbox of processes that are really useful for so many things. And I think for that reason, I really like more of this nurture end as well, of trying to inspire girls about the possibilities, even if, and I think we need to tell them, even if you're not good, you don't think you're good at math, right? Or your physics class is hard or something like that, you know, even so, you know, there are so many possibilities, and each discipline is so different. I think like the more examples they have, the better, right? I think physics in college for me was hard. Physics in high school was no problem. Physics in college was hard. And so I think, you know, and even there's professors. I have friends that are now professors who talk about the class that they're teaching, that when they took it, they really struggled. Right? And sometimes we don't hear those stories, you know, sometimes people don't admit those things. But it really is, I think, more often than we realize it is the case. Yeah, so I think, you know, you can find your fit, right? There's so many different options, there's so many different paths, and you can kind of fine tune your path. And, you know, even if something is hard, maybe you'll be teaching it in the future. So yeah, struggles in STEM may not be indicative of anything other than the fact that the material is hard, and that the universe runs by rules that we still need to figure out. So, oh, I was reading the beginning of another question there.
And there's also another one up a little bit further up, Alice. I didn't want to miss Susie's, because she's asking, you know, how can we include the use of liberal arts in STEM, as it's often ostracized to be not scientific.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, I went to Princeton because I wanted the liberal arts education as well as the technical. I mean, I think the arts are like super important. I mean, we don't want to just be robots. We don't want to just be efficient. You know, we want to be human. And there's so much to that. And so I think, you know, maybe in the pandemic, you know, we've realized how much we need to be able to go to sporting events. We need to be moved by a beautiful composition, a beautiful orchestra, like a good production. You know, there's something in that like we cannot describe in an easy way, you know. There's so much to like the human experience and to life that is not describable in a simple way, that really the arts can bring out. So I think there's always going to be value in that, and I think, you know, more crosstalk between these fields, I think is going to be really valuable. That's actually why our next XX Chats is probably going to be Humanities X Chats, because the STEM and humanities together is really, I think, going to lead to some interesting possibilities. But, you know, it's like each one needs to see what they can contribute, and, you know, they're separate groups because, yes, like STEM people need to get together and be on the same page and, like, you know, be the best they can be in their field and navigate that has its like super unique challenges. We need humanities people to be able to do the same. And when each one is doing its thing well, we can find those intersections and those crosstalks. And hopefully, you know, each one at its best will lead that intersection to be at its best as well. So I think there's, it's really an important area. There's a lot of possibilities there. And I think just getting people talking is a great thing. I had a visual reminder of this when I was at Stanford, because we have the engineering quad in one part of campus, and then you have business school in another part, you have the hospital and the med school in another part. And there was an interdisciplinary program that started with a view of helping people really do truly interdisciplinary research. And they would give grants, but like the requirement was that it involved multiple disciplines. And so you would bring in these different people. So they actually built a building right in the middle of all of those departments, right? And so it's physically in between the hospital and the engineering quad and the business school. And they put a cafe in the bottom floor. And so and they have a Pete's coffee in the top. Everybody loves to go there. They have really good food for lunch, right? So it's like a hub of activity, and you're like routinely seeing a lot of, students with their laptops. You're routinely seeing doctors in their scrubs, business people with their ties. And it's great, to get people intermingling. It's like easy to like make an appointment to like, it's not out of my way to go there. Like I normally am there. You can bump into people, you can grab coffee there. So that really facilitates, right? And I think we need to not stay in our silos, but we really need to like engage people and to talk through these things and find these areas to, work together on and make things better together. Yeah. Actually, one of my favorite courses in college was a course on John Milton. The professor, it was an English class, right? We read Paradise Lost and Paradise Regained. Yeah, John Milton. It was really great. The professor was just like really exceptional and like loved the subject. And really, it was a phenomenal class. The lectures were just like a whole nother level that took the book to life. It was really, yeah, very, very enriching. Awesome.
Let's see if I can go back to Sarah's question here. Do you want to ask it, Sarah, or do you want me to? Either way, it's okay.
I can ask it.
Okay.
And this question stemmed from just kind of like I guess you could call it a stigmatized culture within STEM. And I'm just wondering what struggles you have faced in STEM and what advice you might give to girls who aspire to be in a STEM field, because it is predominantly dominated by men. And unfortunately, things can happen where women might feel less valued, and other genders as well may feel less valued. So overall, do you have any advice for young people who want to get into STEM, who are considered, I don't know, maybe minorities in the field?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's really important. I think like the number one advice I would give is to like be aware of the problem, but not hyper aware of the problem, right? I think your modus operandi, what you have in your head when you go into work, when you go into school, is doing the best that you can there. Is like I was saying, my parents drilled into me that you can be whoever you want to be. You can do whatever you set your mind to. I mean, I think that this is really important. I think while we work together to, help each other believe this and like truly believe it. And I think, believing in others and conveying that to others is a great way to start the domino effect. I believe in you, you can do this, and, not just in a warm, fuzzy way, but in concrete times when we realize our classmates or our colleague is like struggling with something, trying to contribute, trying to encourage, trying to boost up, try to build people up. We don't need more cutting down, right? The discipline is hard enough as it is, and science is challenging. So I think like, really actively trying to help other people succeed is a great way to do this. I think there's multiple reasons why it's good. The selfish way to look at it is that, you know, by contributing, you realize what you can do, and that is a good thing. But, you know, the not selfish way and like the whole reality of the picture is that by having that mentality, you really are helping other people to do better and to be better. And you're creating that atmosphere that's going to enable so many people to be able to do that. So I think if ever, it's a little bit counterintuitive. And it's not to undermine the difficulties at all, right? And it's not like, oh, we'll ignore it and it'll go away. But it's really putting your best foot forward and like making it so that the difficulties are obsolete, right? And that's only going to happen when we really are focused on helping everybody succeed. Sometimes we get in like this, you know, like me against the world kind of mentality, and because like, you know, I feel that, you know, I'm not valued or something, that I'm just gonna, you know, power through and I'm not gonna talk to them, and they don't. Sometimes we get like a little bit militant almost, or we get protective, or we get defensive. And I think that what is much more valuable is that if we can respond to that by not like closing in, but by trying to fan out, you know, by trying to respond to that in a way that actually counters it, by not closing in, but by really looking for who you can help and who you can do this with. It's a bit of a mindset change, but I think that's really what's needed.
Thank you so much. I love that advice. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's such an important topic, you know, and I think I have definitely found that focusing on the difficulties like doesn't seem to help. I mean, in many different aspects, you know, I mean, whether it's, you know, women in STEM, or I was giving somebody whose advice was like just starting out in her PhD program, and, you know, I was encouraging her. My first advice was to find a good hobby, you know, to find like other meaningful activities that like really like give you life, you know, that are really like you're contributing, you enjoy them, you're actually like making a positive contribution. Because in PhDs, like in research, sometimes like you don't know if anything is making any difference. Like it doesn't seem to be working, it's a long process. So something that's tangible and that you're really contributing is like a great thing. So, you know, I think that's a bit of a metaphor for this. That's, you don't know if how you're doing, to have, you know, women thrive in STEM. You know, some disciplines are harder than others, I think. For some disciplines, I think, or some environments, it can seem like more of an uphill climb, but being hyper focused on the problem doesn't really solve the problem. Sometimes we get like overwhelmed by it, that we're not really at our best to be solving it. So, but together we can.
Yeah, I think that is really a great way to look at it. In my mind, as you were speaking, Alice, I was just thinking about how, you know, somebody who's a little bit higher on a mountain kind of puts their hand down to help that other person up. And so I'm hoping that, you know, as women, we can do that for and with each other, you know, that we can
absolutely.
do that.
I love that. Yeah, I love that metaphor. And I guess the one thing I would add to that is just that if you don't see a hand reaching down to you, to not worry about it, you know? Yeah. Like you plant your feet well where you are and you keep pulling people up, and then stick in your, I'm not a climber, so I don't know what those are, but you know, you keep climbing up, you know, you keep forging ahead. Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah. And I mean, you guys are obviously doing this with this group here, so it's great.
Well, we just just loved hearing about your journey and everything that you've shared with us. I think we can all relate to it, and I don't know, I really am grateful to you for coming on and just talking with us about your life and your advice. I think that we learn from each other like that. We tell our stories.
For sure. Yeah, no, thank you for having me, and it was great to meet you all, and yeah, I'm happy to be in touch about anything in the future if anybody wants to reach out. So